Hey guys, today we're talking about cell transport. If you want to keep going where you had your cell membrane notes, you don't really need a new title. If you want a new title though, you can make it cell transport because this is all part of the cell membrane. So totally up to you. If you want a title, go ahead and write down cell transport. So we're going to be talking about how things move across the cell membrane. All right, so cell membrane transport, so how we move things across the cell membrane, can be classified in two ways. Okay, so go ahead and write that down because we're going to talk about the two ways that it can be classified. The first way is a way that you already know about. Remember we talked about osmosis and diffusion, right? Osmosis, moving water from high to low, and diffusion, moving particles from high to low. This is what we call passive transport. Passive means it doesn't use energy, okay? It can just pass through the cell membrane without any energy at all. Okay, so passive transport is just a big category. It includes diffusion and osmosis, okay? So any type of cell transport that doesn't use energy is called passive transport. Let's look at why it doesn't use energy, okay? We know that it moves molecules from high concentration to low. And if you don't want to write all of that, just write high to low. You can abbreviate it high to low. If we take a look down here, we see that there's a high concentration here, lots of molecules, and a low concentration here, right? So high to low, okay? Let's look at why it doesn't use energy. If we look at this like mountain over here, okay, if I'm going and I'm at the top of the mountain, okay, how much energy is it going to take for me to go down that mountain? Like if I'm on a sled or I'm on roller skates, it's not going to take very much energy, right? I can just kind of coast down because I'm already high up, right? So you can use that to think about passive transport, right? It doesn't use energy because if you're already at the top, it's going to be really easy to go down. Same thing over here, right? If we already have a lot, it's going to be pretty easy to go towards the lesser amount. So passive transport includes osmosis and diffusion. Another way of saying this is that osmosis and diffusion are examples of passive transport because both osmosis and diffusion don't use energy. So osmosis is moving water, okay? Diffusion is moving molecules or particles. So what's the opposite? What's the other type then? The other type is known as active transport. This is supposed to have a number 2 by it. So ignore the fact that it says number 1 because number 1 was passive. So write number 2, active transport. Active transport does use energy. Now these are the new ones. We haven't talked about active transport, right? We've only talked about osmosis and diffusion. And osmosis and diffusion don't use energy. So let's look at why it has to use energy. We say it's going against the concentration gradient. Now that means some big words here, but it's going against the way that it wants to go. So normally molecules like to move from high concentration to low, but here they're moving from low to high, okay? Let's think about this, okay? If I use my same mountain analogy, if I need to go from the bottom of the mountain, where it's low, all the way to the top, high, how much energy is it going to take? It's going to take a lot more than going down, right? So when we think about going from low to high, it takes a lot of energy, okay? It takes a lot of energy to move these molecules because normally the molecules want to go the opposite direction. So the two types of active transport we're going to learn about are something called endocytosis and exocytosis. Sound like big scary words, don't worry. They're not, okay? Just write this down and we're going to talk about each one of them on the next slide. All right. So you already have all this written down. Don't be scared about this, okay? You're just adding the red stuff, okay? So one form of active transport is endocytosis, okay? Now, before you write anything down, look at this diagram down on the right. This is what endocytosis is, okay? Doesn't look that scary, right? All it is it's surrounding some molecules that it wants to bring in. Maybe there's some nutrients, maybe it's an invader it wants to get rid of, surrounding it and bringing it into the cell. Now remember, we talked about receptors. We said receptors are proteins on the outside of the cell, okay? So on the left here, you see some of these green Y-shaped receptors. These receptors are going to help pull those molecules in so that when it surrounds those receptors, it can bring them into the cell, okay? So all you need to know is receptors help and they pull the molecules into the cell, okay? If you want to write they pull it in by surrounding them, you can do that too, but you need to write down the definition for endocytosis. If you take Spanish or another foreign language, you'll notice that en, right, means in, right? So it's pulling them in, or you can just think that en sounds like in. All right, I had to switch something really quick. So the last type here is called exocytosis. Notice how it sounds like the word exit, okay? And again, it's got cyte, so it's exiting the cell. And this is when the cell is releasing molecules, okay? It takes this little bubble, right? This is called a vesicle. It's kind of like the vacuole, but it's just like a little container inside the cell. And it merges with the cell membrane and it releases the stuff to the outside. So if we think about it, the cell would probably want to get rid of like waste, okay? So waste molecules, carbon dioxide is considered waste a lot of times because you breathe that out. So cells use oxygen, they get rid of carbon dioxide, and that carbon dioxide has to go out of the cell. So let's do a really quick review, all right? You might want to write this in your notes. I find it easier to see the differences than to just read them in my notes. So I like it when things are organized like this. But if you don't like this, that's totally fine. You don't need to copy it down, okay? Because this is all review of information you already have in your notes. So cell transport divided into two types. Passive goes from high to low, right down the sledding hill. Doesn't use energy because going down the sledding hill doesn't take energy. It includes osmosis, so moving water molecules, and diffusion, moving all other molecules. Then we have active transport, moves molecules from low to high, so going up the sledding hill. And it uses energy because going up that hill is really tiring. It includes endocytosis, bringing stuff into the cell, and exocytosis, bringing stuff out. And the reason these two take so much energy is because we're actually moving the cell membrane, and that takes a lot of energy to do. So that's it for the lesson, and I will see you guys all shortly.